worst revival of an economy since the Great Depression. And believe me, we're in a bubble right now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And we better be awfully careful. And we have a Fed that's doing political things. This Janet Yellen of the Fed. The Fed is doing political by keeping the interest rates at this level. And believe me, the day Obama goes off and he leaves and he goes out to the golf course for the rest of his life to play golf, when they raise interest rates, you're going to see some very bad things happen because the Fed is not doing their job. The Fed is being more political than Secretary Clinton.
If you were expecting an inappropriate or vulgar comment on immigration, Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton, or Obama, you might be feeling disappointed, and I understand you perfectly. But let me tell you, right off the bat, there hasn't been a more serious and dangerous comment in this election up until now. And in just a few moments, you will understand exactly why. This is not a political ad, and it doesn't matter if you think the Republican frontrunner is full of hot air, or if you think this is a slip of the tongue from somebody who knows more than he is willing to share with the rest of us. What is at stake right now is the financial security of every American family. And the danger is growing as we move closer and closer to the next election. So please, take a few moments to watch this very important presentation.
My name is Charles Hayek, and I'm a retired economics professor. Most of my life, I've studied macroeconomics and the cycles of boom and bust in the global economy. What I can promise you right now is if you give me just 10 minutes of your time, you will understand more about our economy than many Harvard graduates.
In my research, I have uncovered a strange pattern that has been going on for the past 20 years. A bizarre economic cycle intimately linked to every U.S. election since then. Right now, I will show you the hard facts that led me to this conclusion in plain and simple English, so that by the end of this video, you can make your own choice and be better prepared for what's to come. But to understand how this bizarre pattern works, we need to take a short look back at 1999.
When the ball drops on the year 2000, it will be a momentous event for the world and for the U.S. economy, which is closing in on its longest expansion ever. The decade has been marked by strong growth, the lowest unemployment in a generation, and yet remarkably little inflation.
It seemed like a totally different America than the one we are living in today. The stock market was booming thanks to the internet companies, affectionately called the dot-coms. For many Americans, investing in the internet companies seemed like the quickest way to become rich. More and more people put their savings into the stock market, driving it higher and higher. They gambled their money on the hope that they could sell those stocks for 2 to 3 times their value. And everybody was praising the Clinton administration for creating the biggest economic growth in U.S. history. For a time, it worked. To many, it seemed like the party would never end. Even the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, said, "Technology is creating a new economy, one where the old rules no longer applied." The Fed was so confident that in February 2000, it began raising the interest rates to their highest level since 1995. At the same time, bad economic data started to come in. The previous holiday season that was supposed to bring big profits to internet-based companies was a major disappointment. And it was not just online shopping. Ordinary Americans bought less, and consumption was dropping. While the nation was preparing for the next election, the house of cards built around the stock market started to collapse. On the 12th of April, 2000, the NASDAQ dropped by 386 points. It was the largest drop ever recorded, and by the end of the next week, Wall Street had lost almost a quarter of its value. The long economic boom of the late 90s became a gigantic bust. Bush was entering office at a time when the NASDAQ had lost 60% of its value, erasing $7 trillion of American wealth. Clinton's economy grew on the back of the dot-com bubble, and now everybody was looking to Bush to get the economy going again. But before going any further, let's take a short step back and see what we can learn from this. An economic bubble grows around an asset that becomes very attractive to investors. In the 90s, this asset was the internet company stock. Greed attracts more and more people who gamble their money, hoping that prices will go up and they will sell for a profit later. When people are blinded by the bubble, they think that growth will never end. This delusion is fueled by the media, economic experts, and even the Fed. At this point, something very interesting happened. As the economy showed signs of slowing down, the Fed raised the interest rate. And, curiously, some months before the next U.S. election, the bubble bursts, creating massive economic pain. We now have a theory that we can put to the test. A bubble emerges and grows on low interest rates. Investors and speculators are down in, as the experts say. Everything is fine and growth will continue. The Fed raises interest rates in a time where the economy begins to slow down. And that specific time is right before the next presidential election. The bubble bursts, and the next president has to deal with the aftermath. If this sounds crazy to you right now, let's put the theory to the test.
I do believe in the American dream. I believe there is such a thing as the American dream. Owning a home is a part of that dream. It just is. Right here in America, if you own your own home, you're realizing the American dream.
The asset this time was houses. The Federal Reserve had cut interest rates from 6% in 2001 to 1% in 2003. Rock-bottom interest rates created a huge demand for mortgages, as they were cheaper to pay off. Everybody wanted a house, and that pushed prices up. You could get rich just by becoming a homeowner, as the price kept going up. Soon, even people who could not afford to make a down payment or could not provide proof of a steady income and collateral were given loans to purchase new homes. If these people defaulted on their payments, the bankers didn't care. They would be left with a house, an asset that was rising in price. These no down payment, no collateral mortgage loans, called subprime mortgages, were given to millions of low-income families.
One of the barriers to home ownership is the inability to make a down payment. And if one of the goals is to increase home ownership, it makes sense to help people pay that down payment.
Now, the bankers had a brilliant idea. Bundle up the normal mortgages with the subprime ones and sell them to other banks, pension funds, hedge funds, and sovereign funds. Mortgage payments generated huge profits, and demand was high for this new type of speculative contract, now called collateralized debt obligations, or CDOs. This created the housing bubble.
Ben, there's been a lot of talk about a housing bubble, particularly, from the Fed, from all sorts of different places. Can you give us your view as to whether or not there is a housing bubble out there?
Well, unquestionably, housing prices are up quite a bit. I think it's important to note that fundamentals are also very strong. We've got a growing economy, jobs, incomes. We've got very low mortgage rates.
The experts appeared all